Are you going to build that pipeline?
No,
What people in Alberta and Saskatchewan, have you spoken to Pierre Poilievre?
Following the selection of Prime Minister Mark Carney's new cabinet, Vassy Kapelos of CTV News interviewed the Prime Minister and did what I expect a lot of media is going to do over the coming months and potential years. That is, frame everything from a right-wing perspective. So in this video, I'm going to share a few clips from this interview, how this is not just a CTV or Vassy Kapelos issue. This is an issue with Canadian media generally. And then I'll get to the questions that really should have been asked around his cabinet. So let me play this sequence of clips for you. These are a few questions. I cut out the first 10 minutes. The first 10 minutes of the interview is just asking, why isn't there more change? You promised change, even though half the cabinet is new and the other members were moved around to other positions. Again, this change for change's sake means nothing. It's what do these members actually deliver, or what can they deliver in their positions? But that aside, the second half of the interview gets a little deeper into what we are going to see over the next few months in coverage of this government.
They want to know where conventional energy fits into your ambitions. And it's not just because, if I may, not just because of the record of the previous government, it's because of you yourself, your book Values, for example, which extensively talks about a reorientation of the market around the climate imperative. I think Canadians had been asking throughout the campaign, and now, like, is this Prime Minister Mark Carney of values, or is it the Prime Minister of the campaign? Like, are you going to build that pipeline if the consensus exists? What people in Alberta and Saskatchewan who didn't vote for your party are worried about, right? They are worried that it is the Mark Carney of values, it is the Justin Trudeau government, and the reason I ask about that is against that backdrop, right? You are still saying you're going to keep C-69 in place, you are going to keep the emissions cap in place. Have you spoken to Pierre Poilievre about seeking support from the Conservatives in advancing parts of that agenda?
I rolled my eyes so often during this 20-minute interview that they almost fell on my face. This government won because the NDP vote collapsed and coalesced around the Liberal Party. A majority of Canadians voted for a center to center left party. That is what they want. Why is every question now framed from the perspective of the oil business? Is climate no longer an issue in our society? Is labor a problem? Housing. Anything about housing at all in this interview? No. So I'm going to get to a couple of questions that should have been asked. But just to be clear about Bill C-69, this was brought up a couple times at least during this interview, the defense of Bill C-69. This is a bill that requires resource projects to be assessed for environmental, health, social, and economic impacts and respect the rights of Indigenous peoples. This is apparently very offensive to Canadian media. Critics, including Poilievre, have called it the No More Pipelines Act, which I think is a good thing to call. Yes, call it the No Pipelines Act. That's not a negative. That's a positive. But again, this is not just CTV News. This is not just Vassy Kapelos. I don't think I've ever honestly seen an interview with the Prime Minister where the reporter is very concerned about the climate. I'm not sure that's ever happened in the history of Canadian, at least mainstream Canadian media, whether it's CTV, CBC, Global, whoever it is. They don't take that issue seriously ever. It's always from the perspective of Alberta. And really, let's be clear, not Alberta workers, not oil workers, from the industry. They take on the perspective of big oil business because there's a way to protect the workers and ensure the workers are okay without destroying our planet. But again, everything here from a right-wing perspective, despite the fact that there are legitimate questions about this cabinet. Like, there's a federal AI minister, which, worth noting, Evan Solomon here, maybe AI himself. But apart from that, okay, fine. You want to have an AI minister? But No labor minister? An AI minister, but no labor minister. I mean, you're basically telling everybody we are very concerned about AI not having enough jobs. So we're going to make sure AI gets the jobs while labor disintegrates. And that gets to the heart of some of the issues with this major focus on AI. From Press Progress here, Sharon D'Souza, National President of the Public Service Alliance of Canada, said that while AI can be a useful tool, she is very concerned about how AI could impact the public's ability to access public services, especially senior citizens. I already dealt with, she goes for an example here. When someone is experiencing crisis in their life, they look to the government for answers and they want to talk to somebody. They don't want to be stuck in an endless loop of automated prompt responses. I literally called the CRA today to try and talk to somebody, and I was stuck in a loop of automated prompt responses. So it's already bad. I can't imagine how much worse it's going to get now if AI is replacing government jobs. But the other problem, of course, is the potential impact on labor. The Canadian Association of Public Employees also expressed concern about the inclusion of AI in public service work in their statement, congratulating Carney, demanding the government guarantee a robust federal workforce by, quote, ensuring that any increase in the use of artificial intelligence to be done responsibly to support federal workers, not replace them with unproven technologies. Is that how it's going to be implemented? I am skeptical. But I would be less worried if there was someone there to oversee labor, and there isn't. This from the Canadian Dimension. Before the election, Carney had already eliminated the Minister of Labor portfolio, demoting and folding it into a broader jobs and families hodgepodge. This makes his cabinet the first to be without a dedicated labor minister since 1909. Carney only formally giving labor a Secretary of State portfolio, which is not a cabinet position. No prime minister has given workers less of a formal place in the last 120 years. This is barely being discussed. I've seen, some coverage of this on CBC, but for this to be the first interview he does following announcing the announcement of his cabinet, and CTV doesn't bring this up at all, is concerning, not just for CTV, but for what the coverage of this government is going to be. Yet, who gets to benefit from this? Conservatives. Tory MP Jamil Javani concerned about lack of labor minister. You've screwed up when a conservative MP is winning the messaging war on labor. The very thing they have helped to try and destroy over their lifetime, but also over the past 10 or so years with bills that I did video on this before the election, with the bills that they claimed in their new platform, they're very against these anti-union bills, but they named bills that they themselves brought up and voted for while the other parties voted against them. But look what this switcheroo that the conservatives are trying to pull now, that they're very concerned about labor rights, despite having no history of showing that concern. Another issue, the housing minister is ex-Vancouver Mayor Gregor Robertson, who, I want you to guess, do you think he did a good job in Vancouver on the issue of housing? I have some figures to show you in a minute here. I don't even think I need to get to them. I think you understand that housing in Vancouver is incredibly expensive and homelessness is a major problem. And that's after throwing Erskin Smith away, who had barely been there. Trudeau brought him in as the housing minister at the end of last year through his cabinet shuffle. And then Erskin Smith, one of the early endorsers of Mark Carney in the leadership race for the Liberal Party, and then thrown aside once Carney gets in. Erskin Smith, I would argue, is the best Liberal MP. He's someone that could easily sit as an NDP MP, but chooses to stay on as a Liberal, hoping, I think, to try and move the party in the correct direction of focusing on issues like affordability, labor, housing, but thrown aside. And he tweeted out about it here, saying, I ran again because of the opportunity to make an even bigger difference around the cabinet table and to help fix the housing crisis. I'm not back in any role, unfortunately, so it may not surprise you to learn that it's been a strange day on my end. Worth noting, Erskin Smith was not going to run again as an MP. decided to change his mind as he was given the housing file, and now he doesn't even have that. He says it's impossible not to feel disrespected, and the way it played out doesn't sit right. But I'm mostly disappointed that my team and I won't have the chance to build on all we accomplished with only a short runway. So already, Carney is receiving vocal criticism from his sitting MPs. Here is Vancouver. Number of people identified in Vancouver's homeless count since Gregor Robertson became mayor. And yeah, of course it went up. And this is after Robertson claimed in 2008, when he was running to be mayor, that he would end street homelessness. Is that what happened? And on top of that, the average price of single-family and semi-detached homes rose 179% across the broader Metro Vancouver area. Now, I want to be clear. Of course, the mayor of Vancouver alone cannot fix the housing crisis. But then maybe don't try and make promises that you know for a fact you can't keep. Don't claim you're going to end street homelessness if you can't guarantee that everyone's going to have a place to live, or at least stay. So, look, it's possible his experience being the mayor of Vancouver gives him a unique view on how, municipalities and provinces and the federal government can all work together to build housing. I'm sure there is some benefit there to the job that he experienced. That said, it's not a good look when you throw out Erskin Smith, who was a great MP for this role, and stick in somebody who has this track record. And on top of that, I want to share this because it's just funny, the sequence of events here. David Moscrop tweeted this out on May 13th. If Robertson is the housing minister, the first job of his staff is going to be to convince him there's a housing crisis. The next day, when asked if house prices need to go down, new housing minister Gregor Robertson said, no. No, he said more, to be clear. Let me play the whole video here.
Affordable housing.
Do you think home prices need to go down?
No, I think that we need to deliver more supply, make sure the market is stable. It's a huge part of our economy. We need to be delivering more affordable housing. The government of Canada has not been building affordable housing since the 90s, and we've created a huge shortage across Canada. That's where the big need is right now, and I'm very encouraged that the Prime Minister and our commitment right now in government is the double construction and focus on the affordable side.
Okay, but housing prices need to come down. They just need to. If any of this is going to have any impact. So this has lots of replies, by the way, from people like this. Les Perot tweeting out, personally, I'd accept a bigger correction on my home value if it means my sons can move the hell out of my house one day. I think a lot of people feel the same way. The cost of housing, of course, has to come down if you're going to properly address this issue. You can't play both sides here like the Liberals have been trying to do. You have to just get real with the situation. Here is Mark Carney defending his choice to pick Robertson as his housing minister.
When Gregor Robertson was Vancouver mayor, the price of buying a house increased by 179% in one of the most expensive markets in Canada. Why do you think someone with this track record should oversee the housing file? Is this a signal from you that you don't think housing prices should go down?
You would be very hard pressed to make that conclusion from everything I've said and what our priorities are. We have a strong view on housing, a very clear policy, a policy developed with a number of members of the team, including with Mr. Robertson, and I'm thrilled that he is in the new role because he brings the type of experience that we need to tackle some aspects of this problem. One of them is is how the federal government can help get municipal costs and municipal regulation costs down and regulation out of the way so that more houses can be built. Ultimately, a housing crisis, and it is a crisis, is ultimately solved by supply. We can do things to help with affordability at the start, which is why we have the GST cut, but ultimately it's a question of supply. And as I think you know, Julie, we have very aggressive objectives on supply, the doubling of the building of supply across Canada. We're going to have to change how we build. And a lot of that expertise, it's not exclusively, but a lot of it is actually been developed in British Columbia. Minister Robertson is very familiar with it. We're going to incorporate that, but in a pan-Canadian strategy to really drive this.
So I get Mark Carney's reasoning, It makes sense within the context of what he wants this minister to do. It's worth noting that Mark Carney did acknowledge that he wants housing prices to come down, so he should probably speak with his minister on that. I'm just more bothered by the fact that Nate Erskin Smith wasn't at least given another cabinet position. He's the best Liberal MP, somebody who actually cares, whether it's about human rights, one of the only Liberal MPs to speak out about what's been happening in Gaza, whether it's housing, affordability, labor. Nate Erskin Smith is someone who can actually push the party forward, and it represents the voters that voted for the party. When a lot of, again, NDP vote collapsed and voted for the Liberal Party, leading them to be able to form this government. So to completely ignore that side, I think, is a mistake. And again, something that the media should be focusing on. Let's get away from this right-wing framing. Let's get away from whatever Pierre Poilievre is trying to argue for his government. Let's focus on the issues of human rights, of affordability, of housing. Focus on those issues and speak to the experts in those areas on what needs to be done to address those issues.